always comes to this. Oh there guys, today I wanted to make a bit of a different video. I just got done showing off session 4 of my chest piece here recently, and I thought it might be good to touch base a little bit about kind of how my work heals these days versus how it used to, my general aftercare and things that I recommend avoiding versus things that I recommend doing. I've got all kinds of experience now. You can call it anecdotes or whatever. I don't know. You don't have to listen to me if you don't want to, but I think there's a high probability that I might be the most hours tattooed of anyone who's ever lived by now. And I don't think I'm stopping anytime soon. So if you want to take some wisdom from me, here are some things that I've learned along the way. Now, I'm going to start with what I do for aftercare, because I feel like that's a real big one. I've tried all kinds of things over the years. There's a picture of me famously that's gone viral several times where I got almost a full suit of Sanoderm on, where my artist Lee had tattooed my whole left side and most of my left arm in one session. And I did about 5.5 hours of blackout, and that was both the longest blackout session I've ever had and the longest time Lee has ever tattooed me, both at the same time. That was bad for all kinds of reasons. Now, just because I was okay to sit for it doesn't mean my body was okay to handle it. So right off the bat, I'm going to say quite often I feel my body and my mind are out of sync with one another. I feel this way similarly when I'm stretching piercings, where I can mentally handle the pain, but the body has its limits, and that's where you can get into trouble. I was pretty sick after that session. I'm not gonna lie. I went home and I threw up, and I was pretty sore and just wanted to lay around in bed for the next few days. I didn't do that because I have a job. I had to work. But the long story short was I never did another blackout session that long again. I will also put another caveat that the only 2 real tattoo infections I've had in all of my hours of getting tattooed were blackout tattoos. So for anyone out there who's wondering, yes, blackout tattoos are harder to heal. Now, this is coming from someone who's had full color saturation as well. I've had traditional style tattoos. I've had custom color blending tattoos. All of that stuff, the reason why it isn't as traumatic is because though you are working the same area harder sometimes, and you can go for longer even than it takes to do a big blackout, you're not traumatizing as much of the body at the same time. Unless you're doing a full red out or something. That's the only way you're gonna come close with color. So what I'm trying to get at here is if you're doing a blackout project, just because you can black out an entire arm in one session, that doesn't mean you should. I've been very critical about this, but I think tattooing should be done as a marathon, not a sprint. And I also think that when you do it that way, not only will your body like it more, you won't be in as much pain at the end of it, and you won't have the bad memory of doing a terrible, terrible session that you don't want to do ever again. You'll have a more pleasant memory of, well, that wasn't so bad. I did 2 or 3 hours. We'll do the rest another time. You know, it's going to end up taking you as long. It's just going to be chopped up. And then you're probably going to end up using less touch-ups in the end, needing less touch-ups in the end, and potentially spending less money too. Now, I understand that there are some people who travel to get work done by certain artists or whatever, and they really only have one option, and that is to sit for 2 or 3 8-hour sessions or a couple 12-hour sessions. For the record, my longest session I've ever had was 9.5 hours, and I wasn't in any kind of screaming pain at the end of it. I was just tired and bored. That was probably one of the worst sessions I've ever had, and it's certainly not something that I brag about. Now, people see me, they see me with multiple full body suits of work, and they assume that I'm sitting for days on end or something. You wouldn't believe the things that people will say. I wonder how long that, like they're thinking that I just sat down and got it all done. Well, if you were to sit down and try and do that many layers all at one time, you'd be dead by the end of it. And no artist could stay up long enough to do that either. I'd have to have multiple artists trading in and out, almost like they're tag teaming me. You go on a break, I'll take over. You go on a break, I'll take over. That's just not the way that it works. The sooner you can get used to that tempo of going for a few hours at a time, I think the better your work is going to look too. We had a girl here at the shop had a 2-day session with Alex when he was here. She wanted to do his whole sleeve with him, and it was the only way to do it, was to go back to back. She got a bit of a trauma infection, and some of the red color is spotty. And it sucks because he's gone now, and we don't really want someone else to touch it up because it's a pretty unique piece, and he did a great job. It's just that's a lot for the body to handle. I've found that the longer I've sat, the more area I've covered, the worse things have healed, just in general. Now, I'm sure it's not always the case, but I would think that if I was going to do that 10 times in a row versus what I'm doing 10 times in a row, the chances are that's got a higher probability of causing damage. Now, especially considering the fact that what I'm doing now is over trauma skin to begin with. I had a session here recently with Rick, and Rick doesn't famously Rick being my tattoo artist, he doesn't famously like to work for very long. I think it's a product of him having a bit of a short wind, and he's getting a bit older into it. He's been doing it for 20 something years, and he doesn't have a ton of stamina for long sessions anymore. But it's also that he's learned the same thing I've learned, is that the more you stress the body, the worse the heel is. And he's not a guy who likes to do a lot of touch-ups. Now on me, it's a bit of a different story that we're doing most things more than once. Some things not, but I had a session with him here just recently where we were doing color on black, and my skin was getting resistant, and that was just it. It's because I've got enough scar tissue that he's professional enough to know I don't need any more. He's not risking the biscuit. He's not going to push it. I have great respect for that fact, because it's not like we can't come back to it another time. It's not like we won't come back to it another time. And when the color's not going in well, especially over black, but in general too, it's not going to be as vibrant when it heals. If you're having to strain to get the skin to take it because the skin's tightening up, it's getting thick, it's getting rubbery, that's probably a good sign it's time to call it for the day. A lot of people like to push past that. A lot of people really want to get that picture to post on Instagram. A lot of tattooers really want to finish the project, and a lot of people really want to wear the sleeve. But that sleeve will look better if you take it slow. I know that sounds weird coming from a guy who in 10 years has completed a couple bodysuits and is working on his third. Not 10, but like, what has it been, 15 years? The first bodysuit took the longest because I didn't have the money. I'm sure if I had the financial situation, I probably would have run at that, and I would have got to the blackout even sooner. That being said, people ask all the time whether or not my multiple layers make it harder to tattoo over or get ink to go in. And honestly, no. As long as the work is done properly. And by that, I mean to say, as long as you're not being overworked, your artist isn't in the wrong layer of skin, they're using the right needle speed and depth, and they're running their hand and needle speed at the right pace. They're not digging you up, you know? There's all kinds of things that can cause scarring, but if you're working with professionals, then you shouldn't get any of that. Now, my first suit was done by a lot of people who didn't really know what they were doing. My first suit was done by about 30 different people, and that's where it looks so different. Now, some people love that suit, and I'll never convince people not to, but it's not good. It's not good in terms of what it did to me, and the way it ended up looking was definitely not the final result I was looking for. The tentacles in the first suit were always supposed to be color, and they just never were. The artist who did that just gave up on the project. midway through. He also seemed to refuse to tattoo my armpits and my nipples because he didn't say this, but I think because he wasn't very good. He wasn't very good technically at what he was doing. He was a damn good artist, but not a good tattooer, and those are two different things. As a technician, he sucked. It's just the way it is. Some people aren't good at tattooing, but they can draw really well. These things aren't mutually exclusive. Two different things. Anyway, so long as the work is done, it seems to go in. I don't even know how many times my neck has been tattooed. It's been well over 12, 13 times now. I've had, what, 5 sessions on it this year alone? So what does that tell you? And it's still going in. So no problem so far. Everything on me has been done between 5 and 20 times. So as long as it's being done right by someone who knows what they're doing, there's no problem. That being said, aftercare is a big factor too. And in years prior, when I was young, I used pretty much every different thing. Every artist seemed to have their own tattoo care that they preferred. I've done dry healing. I've done Aquaphor, Green Glide, tattoo goo, that spray-on bandage, which I've condemned. I've talked a lot about that. I don't like that one at all. I've done Green Glide, Pink Glide, Black Glide, all the glides. The thing that I always come back to is Aquaphor, and I only do it a little bit. Generally, after my tattoo session, I wait about 3 hours. I have a nice hot shower, sear it, put a light coat of Aquaphor. Next morning, clean it once, Aquaphor. Then I'm pretty well done cleaning just to put the Aquaphor on. I don't really clean tattoos much more than that. Then I just shower and clean up and Aquaphor after. I go real light on it. I've found that the more you do, the worse it is. If your tattoo's ever goopy, you've done something wrong. It shouldn't be tight and craggly looking, but it should be just kind of normal looking. Like it should just look like your skin. It shouldn't be too wet and thick. That's where you as a customer or you as a client can do a lot of damage to your tattoo. And a lot of people do this. I see it. I can usually see a tattoo that's been over cared for. I can look at it and tell what happened. I can usually tell whether the artist screwed it up or the client screwed it up. And it's because I've done both. I've had both. I've had both multiple times and in different ways. So once you see it, you know what you're looking at. You also know what it looks like when someone's picked a scab. There's like a visible chunk taken out of it. It doesn't look the same as an infection scar though. Those are very distinct. I have some of those on my hands. You can see the lines. You can see all of this. I'll get into that another day. My knuckles basically melted off. I had some spots on my arm that similarly the couple layers of skin melted off. Some really thick scarring in some places. So I don't know if that one's probably not showing off. But anyway, there's a very big difference between when the client gets it wrong and the artist gets it wrong. Usually all it takes for me these days is to see a picture to tell what happened. But that's just because I've been through so many hours of it myself. Anyway, my preferred aftercare has always been Aquaphor, but go light on it. Yeah, so this one was basically just a little touch on what it's like to tattoo me, aftercare, things like that. So I hope someone's found this useful. If not, I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'll talk to you guys again soon.